to carry on, मैं तो अपना दो साथियों का दसना Gurjit Gill. He's been working with me for the last, I think, 25
Since 99.
That's right. And we are working together for the development of Punjabi language in this country. Gurjit has a vast experience of organizing supplementary schools. And I have actually given training to his team in Birmingham, and he was a coordinator of the consortium of a large number of supplementary schools in Birmingham. And we have run several meetings together in this country. He is a specialist in health and safety, and we done I actually do free work. Because I do free, I have compelled you to do free as well. So we share our patrol sometimes, right? But we have done free work. I don't want to say much about it, because we will tell about it. Actually, when the government decided to abolish Punjabi or stop examining Punjabi, Gurjit took the lead. So we had a movement, we have made a subcommittee, and he led the team and did correspondence with the government and with the AQA. And the second person we have, Nanaksar. I think many of you already know Nanaksar. He was presented 6 channel first, and at the moment he is working with AQA channel. Many of you may have seen him on the TV many times. Nirmal Singh Kandali actually was the leader of our team in the 6th channel. We are grateful to 6th channel who gave us time, free time to present our case. Actually, 3 of us were the regular people who went, but we invited so many other people as well. So we ran regular program on Saturdays for about over a year. Punjabi we had a petition over about 31,000 signatures. We got it done. Yeah. And we presented to the government, and we presented the presentation to the AQA as well. I personally wrote a few letters to AQA in this connection, and we promised that we will produce good examiners, and we will also help to increase the number of children in schools for entry. Now I want to, I felt so happy when I received an email from Judith Rowland-Jones, who is head of curriculum for languages at AQA. And she mentioned that she wanted to join one of our training meetings. That was a very happy news for me, and I was so delighted. And we are very grateful to Judith, and who actually have agreed to take the major part of this training session. And we are so grateful. She traveled today, and she brought a lot of training materials, which you will find useful. I happened to work with Judith for many years with the AQA. And really I enjoyed working with AQA for a very long time. And I have great respect for all the members of AQA and who gave me a lot of respect. That's why I was with AQA for about, with JMD, NEA for about 30 years. So I first like perhaps many of you know that the first school which started teaching of Punjabi as a timetable subject was my school in Coventry, Sydney Singer School and Community College. And and we used to produce many O-level students. And then we argued with the Joint Matriculation Board that there must be an A-level examination. There was no A-level examination in this country before 1980. In 1980, our school was the first to produce A-level students. And the first examination took place in 1980, and that was through my school. Anyway, so I first of all like to ask, thank you very much, Judith, for coming and joining us. I hope it will be useful. Now I invite Gurjit to talk about
and thank you, Dr. Nagra. Before I make a start, actually, the toilets are actually at the back. Somebody want to use it? And the fire exit, basically, there are two fire exits, one at the back, one here. Just in case of any alarm goes off, fake or real, you'll walk through this door, go all the way down where you entered the main building. So I need to have the attendance list back, please, so that we can make sure we got it with our secretary, just in case we have to go out. So we already mentioned, actually, if you can please switch off your phones, so that there's not will be a very short time. We want to give as much as time to Judith. It's your training, Judith, today. We are just introducing ourselves. I'm not going to introduce myself. Dr. Nagra has already done more than enough, which is not all true. He's very high things about me. But it's just a seva. What we decided actually is seva is no employment, no business. It's all seva in our own time, sharing our experience with all the teachers and getting everybody together, national level data list, so that we can get all the ordinary schools together, 300, 400. Then with the central database, we can communicate to them. Actually, hopefully, Judith will liaise with Dr. Nagra or myself. Any changes at the board level or exam level, sooner we know, we can actually pay something. Because at the moment, there are certain schools that don't have information point there, saal lang janda. New GCSE exam, not 100% teachers are not trained. Information so hopefully we'll try to develop a network. 2020 is actually our target, me, Dr. Nagra, Mr. Kandavi, 3 of us, and we're going to present 5 culture with the program. We present within that network, and we good actually we'll have actually conference once in a year, get together, invite Judith or somebody from AQA. They could give us update. This is the start. Today is the start. Please actually help us attend all as many as we actually organize as many functions. So first of all, Judith, thank you very much for coming. When Dr. Nagra told me, I was over the moon. So I was thinking, I liaised with Judith through by emails when A-level was abolished. So thank you for coming. Thank you, Paji, Gurdwara. Yeah, thank you very much. You have actually provided such a wonderful facility, especially there was no screen here. They put this screen especially for us. Sabjit Joel is here. Paji Vijay again. So thank you, the committee of the Gurdwara, and thank you everybody for coming in on Saturday morning from all over the place. I think half of the country is here. Punjabi school. North, south, east, west, and we'll try to arrange another actually training for people who couldn't actually attend, possibly in Leicester. Kindly, Judith has actually agreed. Just quickly, because we just slightly running over, Judith, just 2 minutes more. I cannot give you much information now, we haven't got much time. What I'm going to actually take you through is actually what do we do under PET? Basically, why this training? Because I think we call it teaching and safe working. There were the two elements actually we're focusing on. Safe working and improving quality of teaching and increasing number of students, obviously examiners and training teachers. That's the main reason. Mr. Kandalvi is covering actually part of the element of our training. He covers future of Punjabi. As a media person, he always has actually more information about the language and all that actually. He does cover actually 1/3 of the training about what we're going to do about Punjabi in the future. Dr. Nagra, as always, he is into like vision to improve quality of teaching in Punjabi supplementary schools by training GCSE teachers for new curriculum, A levels, and he's going to run another session after the break between 3 and 4 for new A level. So I took responsibility. I directly teach Punjabi for nearly 15 years, did run schools, managed schools. Now we're training and we're supporting the school. The school at this Gurdwara, but we gave me responsibility to improve it. I'm working for the last 6 months. When we say improve, improving everything. Starting with the safety first, then quality. So my main issue is to focus on the safe working practices at the school. I'm just going to go through these 4 elements. The main training is in details. We cover safety, quality, and delivery. What do we cover under there? I'm going to finish after this. Hopefully we'll have a training at your school at some point. It's nearly an hour and a half training. We go through the details of DBS, health and safety policies, all the policies, procedures, and everything. But today I'm not going to do it, but we haven't got the time. Safe management. That's the key actually. The managers, whoever is running a Gurdwara organization or school, need to understand actually how important safety is. We have been teaching in any setup, whether in the school or outside the school. So one or two of the management people should understand the safety to run the school. Safe staff. When we recruit the staff, we need to go through all the procedures to check whoever is going to teach in the school is safe to do so. References, experiences, get the DBS done. Safe parents. You'll ask me actually, why safe parents? Parents have got exactly same role or with more role than teachers. Bring them in on time, take them from the classroom, make sure the kids actually do come into the school. Give you a quick example. I went to Italy for training. One of the Gurdwara in the Khetna Rixi, एक न्याणा उत्थे आंदा रहा, उस पर आंदा रहा, 15-20 दिन उन्होंने पूछा वो 2-3 हफ्ते हमारे थोड़ा बच्चा, why the child is not coming to the school? They said he always comes in. What he used to do, they used to drop them there, he used to play in the fields. So actually, parents went, teachers in the school, and the child is playing in the field. So parents have got a role to play, safety. Students, yes, we need to make sure that we get enrollment form down, contact numbers, any health and safety issues, any special needs, conditions. So we need to make sure the students are safe, we know about them, and we got an action plan. Something happens, you need to know what to do. Safe environment, not safe much. It has to be the chairs, the tables, adequate ventilation, extraction, heating. We need to make sure actually as managers, whoever is running like in this Gurdwara, it's management or head teacher's responsibility to make sure. Give you a quick example. We did run a training at one of the Gurdwaras. The radiator was off and the window was broken. When I said to them, okay, how are you going to teach the kids actually, well, especially in the winter, even in the summer actually. They said actually the kids play cricket outside and they keep breaking the window all the time. I said, just block it. Put different glass. So these are real issues that let's, not all places, some places. So this is what we cover. So I'm going to stop here. Judith, I'm 3 minutes over. It's our total of us, 1. So please come in and take the stage. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Right, very warm welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you in particular interview Dr. Nagra, who, as he mentioned, I've worked with for a long time, and he's an absolute legend, and it's a pleasure to work with him. And just to sort of thank you for everything you're doing to support Punjabi teaching, because we're very grateful, and I know you all are, in terms of the support that you get to deliver the specification. So just to run through what I've given you in your packs, if there are any spare packs, please feel free to take them. You've got a copy of the PowerPoint that I'm going to deliver, so that's for you to take home, and there's some space for you to make notes. The new exam is tiered, so you have quite an important decision to make around whether or not students should be entered for foundation or for higher. So there are two documents about tiering. One's called the tiering guide, and this one's like a little poster. So that's just useful background information for you to read when you take it. You don't have to get it out now, but it's there for you. The other really useful thing is this. You know that we've got a new grading system for GCSE for all subjects, grade 9 to grade 1, with grade 9 being the highest grade. So you've got some information there about the new grading system. So again, that's just for you to take home. Conduct of the speaking test, that's a really important aspect of the new specification, and it's very important that you as teacher examiners do a really good job for your students. So you've got a copy of the training material, it's on our website. I've given you a hard copy here, so this is for you, this is your homework. You can take that away and have a look at it, because it gives you lots of really helpful guidance about how to manage the speaking test. The other two documents, just before we make a start, instructions for the conduct of the exams. I've given you copies of both A-level and GCSE. They're on our website, so they're on the GCSE page for GCSE and A-level for A-level. So please, if you haven't looked at them already, please do, because they've got lots of helpful information in. Anything that's different from 2019 is highlighted in yellow, so it makes it very easy for you to do. And there are two things that have changed which are really important. One is, for those of you who entered students in 2019, you remember that you were asked to encrypt their recordings. Do you remember? Yeah. You don't have to do that in 2020, so that's brilliant news. So you don't have to encrypt the speaking test for your students. And the other thing is, some students are allowed 25% extra time for their tests, and we've produced a recording with all of the pauses in. So I know a lot of your students will actually do their exams in schools, but if your students have got special arrangements, then there is a recording there that the school will have to help them if they've got 25% extra time. So that's in there as well. Right, so as we go through the presentation, if there's anything that's not clear or you've got a question, please feel free to ask. It's your opportunity to go away feeling confident about the 2020 exams. And just to say, first of all, that 2019 was a really successful exam series. It was the first exam for the new specification, and there was some really excellent work done by students, so really, really positive exam. But there are always things that we can do better and things that you can do better for your students. So that's what we're going to look at today. So this is the number of entries. So you can see that between foundation and higher tier, the majority of students for Punjabi do higher tier. Just a small number doing foundation. We would love to see those numbers increase and really sustain the future of the exam. So anything you can do to increase the entries is really appreciated. And this shows the outcomes for students doing Punjabi. So in 2019, grade 7, which is like the old grade A, 43.2% of students got that grade in Punjabi, which is an amazing achievement. In the European language, it's around sort of 24, 25, so in Punjabi it's much, much higher. Grade 4 was 87.1 and grade 1 96.1, so very few students didn't actually achieve a grade 1 in the 2019 exam. So you'll all know what grade boundaries are, and I think it's useful just to spend a little bit of time to explain to you how they're set. So they're set using a mixture of statistics and expert judgment. So our research team gets given some statistical information about the ability of the cohort. and we also get scripts to look at from students in this series, and we compare them with scripts from the previous series to make sure that the standard is comparable. So you've probably heard of Ofqual, and actually they're based in Coventry, so that's interesting. And they're our regulator, and they oversee all of awarding and grade boundary setting. And this is your second piece of homework. On our website is a really useful link to an outline of how the whole process works. So right from setting the papers to marking them and then grading them. So have a look at that because it gives you a really good overview of how this whole process works. Okay. So these were the 2019 grade boundaries for Punjabi, and we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about them, but they're just there for your reference. So, what influences grade boundaries? So you'll know that they're not the same every year, and why aren't they the same? Well, the first thing that we have is something called comparable outcomes, and that's Ofqual's method of ensuring that the standard in Punjabi is maintained from series to series. So it shouldn't matter which series a student does their exam in Punjabi, they will get the same grade. So that's a really important feature of a fair exam system. We get statistical information about the ability of the cohort in comparison with previous series, and that's normally made up of data from Key Stage 2. So students who come through the UK educational system, we have information about their prior attainment. We also look at how the papers in this series have performed with the papers in comparison with the previous series. So what's happened to the mean marks in the papers? So have the mean marks gone up or have they gone down? What's happened to the standard deviation? So that's how the marks are spread across the mark range. So what we like to see is a nice broad spread of marks. We don't like to see a lot of students all getting the same marks, which means that the grade boundaries can be very tightly bunched. We also look at the accessibility of the tasks. So are there any questions that were in the papers that students didn't understand what they had to do? Was there a task type that was confusing? So we look at all of these things. We have the expert judgment of the senior examiners who look at scripts from this series to compare them with previous. But the most important thing about grade boundaries is that they cannot be set until after marking for that particular exam series has all taken place. So sometimes I see people on social media who say things like, oh, I've worked out a formula for working out what next year's grade boundary is going to be. Nobody knows, and nobody will know until after all of the marking has happened, the 2020 exam, which will be around the sort of end of June time. Okay? So that's really important to know. And they can go up and they can go down. So if, for example, in 2020, one of the papers proved to be much more challenging than the equivalent paper in 2019, it's likely that the grade boundary will go down because it's got to take into account the level of demand to maintain that fairness and standards. Okay? So, the speaking and the writing tests are testing active language rather than passive knowledge, and students deal with the questions at their own level, so really differentiation in those papers is by outcome. In the listening and the reading papers of both tiers, they are structured in what we call peaks and troughs within a steady incline of difficulty. So it means the level of demand of the questions is going up and down throughout the paper. And it's really important that students understand that, because if they come across a question, particularly in the listening test, that they found hard, they need to know that actually some easier questions will be coming up, so not to be put off if they come across something that they find hard. And that's quite unlike other subjects. So maths, for example, all of the harder questions are at the end of the paper. But in Punjabi, we've got a nice mix of them across the whole paper. And research has proven that if we set the papers like that, it encourages students to attempt every question, which is what we want. And we all know that sometimes they can pick their marks up in different ways. So even if they're a student of lower ability, they might actually be able to get a few marks on some of the higher demand questions. So that's why they're structured in that way. And in both the listening and the reading papers, we use what we call distractors. And distractors are used to differentiate between students of different ability. And that's what an exam is, isn't it? It's a method of getting a rank order for students. So just like you in your class, you might set an assessment and you'll work out a rank order of your students. So if you set a test and everybody got 100%, it hasn't told you anything about which are the stronger candidates and which are the lower ability students. So those sorts of things that you do in your classes, we're trying to do nationally to get that national rank order. Oh, sorry, can I just go back again? Yeah. So the strength of a distractor plays an important part in the level of demand of a question. So if it's a question that's aimed at, say, grade 8 or grade 9, then the level of the distractor, the strength of that distractor will be quite strong because we're not expecting many students to get those questions right. So that's important for you to think about. Students need to be trained to deal with distractors as part of your preparation for the exams. Let's go back there. So, in the listening and the reading papers, around a third of the marks are targeted at grades 6 and 7, another third at grades 8 and 9, and the final third at grades 4 and 5. So students, if they're expected to get a grade 4 or 5, they really should be doing foundation tier, because if they do higher tier and they don't meet the minimum requirement for a grade 3, then they can end up getting a grade U. And we don't want to see that. We don't want any students to be getting a grade U at a higher tier. So there are some careful decisions you need to think about. So grades 8 and 9 are above what was the legacy grade A. And grade 9 is above what was A star. So students who are getting a grade 9 in Punjabi really are the most outstanding students. They're operating at the highest level of GCSE. And as I mentioned, the distractors in the questions that are targeted at that mark range will be strong. And we know that distractors can be introduced in a variety of ways. So it might be things like using but, however, positive and negative, things like that. And it's important that students' expectations are managed and they're made aware that there will be questions on the exam paper that they either can't do or find challenging. That's just reality, isn't it? That in exams there are always questions that are difficult to answer. So they shouldn't be expecting to get everything right. Okay. Can I just check the people who just arrived? Have you all got copies of? Are there any spare copies of the material? Just one. Yeah. Are there any spare copies? Pass that to you.
I'll pass it on.
Right, so we're going to look first of all at the listening paper. So that's paper 1. And what is absolutely crucial is that students should be trained to maximise their 5 minutes reading time at the start of the paper. And they can do this by doing things like highlighting key words in the rubrics and the instructions. They can use a highlighter in the exam. Sometimes invigilators say that they can't, but they can. It's in the JCQ instructions. And there was an example in Spanish this year where in the rubric it talked about festivals. And in Spanish, the word for festival can also mean parties. So those students who hadn't read that introductory rubric to the question gave answers about parties, when in this context it was all about festivals. So they disadvantaged themselves by not reading that rubric. It's there for a reason. It's not window dressing. It's there to help them understand the context of the question. So you should definitely be advising students to read those introductory rubrics very carefully. Another important strategy is that sometimes they might have to answer 2 questions or even 3 questions for one piece of read the material before the recording moves on to the next question. And they are numbered in the question paper, for example, 8.1 and 8.2. So students in their reading time can find those questions and actually put a bracket around 8.1 and 8.2, so that when they get to that question in the test, they remember, actually, I've got to answer 2 questions here. Because in some of the other subjects, we saw blank part 2s, and we think it's because students haven't realised they have to answer 2 questions from the same piece of recording. So we saw evidence of students doing that in 2019, and it seemed to work well. Section B is answers in Punjabi in the listening paper, and in 2019 we did see a small number of students answering in English in that paper, which means that they don't get any marks. So another thing that they can do is at the start of section B, put a big ring around that on the question paper, or they can write in big letters at the top of that page Punjabi, so they know when they get to this section in the exam, right, I've got to answer in Punjabi. That's it sounds a small practical thing, but the listening test is very stressful for students. We want to make it as easy as possible. As I mentioned, the papers at both tiers are in peaks and troughs, so make students aware of that. And at higher tier, 2/3 of the paper are aimed at grade 6 and above, so just make sure that students are aware as well. And when it's written answers, they're being marked for communication only, so it doesn't matter if there are small spelling mistakes in their answers. As long as what they write communicates the information required by the question, then we will get the mark. And we're not asking them to write in full sentences. So often it will be, it might just be a 1 word or a short phrase. Okay? So, in the 2019 exams, students at the lower end of the ability range found Foundation Question 12 challenging, because that was a question that required written answers, and they found that demanding. And only 61% of students got that question correctly. Now, we would have been expecting a much higher proportion at that level. In Foundation Question 18.3, only half of students answered it because they struggled to understand the Punjabi for fish regularly. And questions 19 to 23 were a really pleasing end to Section A of Foundation tier. The topic was all about mobile technology, which we know that they all love, don't they? So it was very accessible, and in questions 19 and 23, 96% of students got those right, so it was obviously one of their favourite topics, I think we'll say. At higher tier, question 23 was a high demand question and proved to be challenging, so only 47% of students got that one right. And it is really important to practice a range of task types with students, because there will be different tasks that come up in the exams. And in the specification, you've actually got the rubrics in both English and in Punjabi printed. So it's really important that you make sure students know those and they are really familiar with them, and then they'll be able to access the questions in the exam. And one thing they do need to demonstrate their understanding is the difference between the different time frames. That's a requirement of the specification. So there will be questions set that will test, did you do something today, yesterday, or are you going to do it in the future? That sort of task. Okay? So, this slide you can actually share with students before the exams, because it's a really good reminder for them. So reminding them to maximise their reading time, as we mentioned, highlighting those keywords in the rubric, identifying questions which have got more than one part to be answered, putting that bracket around them, signposting section A and section B to make sure that they're answering in the right language. Every mark in these listening tests counts, so we don't want them to be making silly mistakes. Read the rubric carefully, because it will help you give sensible answers. Answer every question, especially where you've got to write a letter. if in doubt, have a guess. We saw some students who left multiple choice questions blank. Well, they've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right, so not to leave it blank, have a guess. Listen carefully to the whole utterance. Don't base your answer on the first thing you hear, because there will be distractors in some questions. Don't give up if you find a question difficult, because some more accessible questions will be coming up. And look carefully at the wording of the question. Are you giving the specific information required? So if it says something like activities, make sure that whatever you're giving is an activity. And often in the question papers it'll say things like give 1 detail or 2 reasons, things like that. So read the questions carefully. And this is a useful one. If you're asked to give 1 reason or 1 detail, only give 1. Some students like to give the examiner a choice. So they'll write 3 or 4 and then ask the examiner to pick out the one that's correct. Do we think examiners do that?
No.
Absolutely not. So what happens in that scenario, if it said something like, give 3 things you buy at the market and they wrote 4, then the first 3 would be marked. So they should really only be answering with what's required by the question. The other point to mention, just to finish off on listening, is around writing single letters. So in a multiple choice item, sometimes students, they write their answer and then they decide they want to change it. So say they've written B in the box, and then they decide, actually, I want to change that, I think it's C. So instead of crossing through B and writing C alongside, what they do is they write C over the top of B. Is it a B or is it a C? What do you think it gets? Nothing, exactly. So that's an important part of exam technique. If they want to change their answer, a multiple choice answer, to cross through the original letter and then write their final answer alongside. It doesn't necessarily have to be in their box, as long as it's close to it. Okay? So that's a useful tip. Now, speaking test, conducting the test, some really important information here. Hopefully you're aware of this. So if a speaking test is going to be conducted by somebody who isn't a member of the school's teaching staff, where the student's doing the exams, permission has to be sought from AQA in advance. And there's a really good rationale for doing that, because in the past it's not always been clear who's been conducting the test or where the test's actually taking place. So this is an inter-board agreement. So examples of teaching